Hi, my name is Jack Wallen, and I have a sort of mea culpa to offer here. If you've been watching my videos, you've probably noticed that a lot of times I begin these videos by saying something like, "This is really important." Well, over the past few days, my wife and I have been watching The Tattooist of Auschwitz. I already read the book, so I knew what to expect coming into it. But even though you know what happens, even though you know the atrocities that surround that entire period, it's still gut-wrenching. And this morning I started thinking about it, and I realized that I felt this sort of weight of guilt on my shoulders for even suggesting that anything that I have to offer is actually important. Now, I know it's all relative. It really is. But the truth is that there's suffering everywhere. And I also know that there's always going to be someone who is suffering more than you and someone who is suffering less than you. And that doesn't mean or make your suffering any less. But when you put it all into perspective, you realize that my problems as a writer are absolutely insignificant to some of the problems that people have endured over the decades and centuries. And I don't want anybody to think that I believe that my problems as a writer or an artist are any bigger than they really are. I once did a show called They Came For Me. It was about Ava Schloss. She was a Holocaust survivor. During the run of that show, I got to meet Ava. And words cannot describe how I felt in her presence. It was beyond profound. She hugged me, and I hugged her back. That moment changed my life. And hearing her talk about her experience, well, it just reminds me how insignificant my struggles really are in the grand scheme of things. So I wanted to say that even though every once in a while I might begin these videos with, "This is really important," I understand how relative it is. I also understand the butterfly effect, and that the beat of a butterfly's wings could have a massive impact somewhere else. I could say something that could affect you in a positive way. You would then in turn affect somebody else in a positive way, and that keeps going. And that's really my hope here. I know that the issues that I have as an artist, they're not world-defining. So I just wanted to lay that out before I jumped in to this next discussion, which I hope you'll find is actually kind of fun, and maybe if you're a writer of some sort, you might learn something from this. So, without further ado, let's jump into the topic. ABACAB. You know it. You have to know it, right? I mean, I understand that not everybody's Gen X or lived their formative years in the 80s, but you have to know the song ABACAB by Genesis. You have to know it. It's a great song. But do you know where the title comes from? I bet you do. Well, if you don't, the title comes from the structure of the song. ABA, C, AB. What does that mean? Well, you probably have heard it more like verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. You know that. You know that good old formula for music. But what's that C there? Well, A would be verse, B would be chorus, A would be verse, C would be bridge, A would be verse, B would be chorus. ABACAB. There's really nothing magical about that. But how does that apply here? Well, I had recently did a video about conceptual writing, conceptual style of writing, and how I believe that that's how I write. And the other day I was out on a run, and ABACAB came onto my headphones. And I listened to it, as I am wont to do. And it dawned on me that is a way, that is really, if I think about it, that is how I structure my stories. And somewhere there's an air compressor going on. Yeah, you know, urban living. Isn't it great? Anyway, I apologize for the horrible sound. I'm just going to keep going. So when I thought about it, I realized that without actually intentionally thinking this way, I write in a very musically structured method. And this applies to books, plays, TV scripts, movie scripts, anything. Let me explain. And I'll try to explain this in a way that you can actually not just understand, but put to use. So, again, A, verse, B, chorus, C, bridge. You get it. You get it. And it repeats. Now, before I say this, I want to mention that I am absolutely against formulaic writing. I don't like formulaic writing because it's very predictable, and I think that it is a crutch. And this is not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about formulaic writing here. Not at all. I'm talking about a way that you can put together your story in a way that flows, in a way that doesn't become monotonous, in a way that builds. Okay? I'm going to relate it to the book series that I'm writing now. I'm not going to actually give anything away from any of the books, but let's just talk about a thriller. We'll kind of shrug off the erotic part of it right now because, you know, family friendly and all. So let's just say this. Okay, so we have A, the A section. Because of the way I like to start books, I like to start the stories off with a bang. I know what you're thinking. I'm writing an erotic series. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you want to start off with a bang. So let's just say that A, within the boundaries of a thriller, of a crime thriller, let's just say A is a murder, is a committed murder, a murder scene. And then B is the police coming in and trying to solve the murder scene. Okay? And then C, which would be the bridge, could be a subplot. And then we have, go back to A again, maybe we have another murder scene. Right? Then B, another scene where the police try to solve the crime. So, with that in mind, here's kind of how I compose my stories. And again, I'm a pantser. I don't outline anything, so I don't do anything in advance other than know the gist of the story. So let's just say I'm starting out a brand new entry in the Violent Delights series. Okay. So I know that I want to start the new book out with a bang. So I'm going to go, hey, I'm going to start this with an A section, a murder section. Bam, A section. So I'll write that section. After that, probably need to bring the police, the detectives into the scene and have them try to solve that murder. They're not going to, because if you just had an A and B and that was it, it would be a short story or flash fiction or something, so it's not enough. Okay, so we've done A and B. Now, do I then want to go back to an A section? Well, that kind of depends on how long the first A and B sections were. If they were long, if A and B took up maybe 4 or 5 chapters, I might go back to an A section. If A and B were kind of shortish, which I have been kind of prone to writing shorter chapters now. I used to write very long. I used to write chapters that were anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000 words, and now they're more like 2,000 words. So if they're short, I might do an A section, a B section, and then I might throw in a subplot. I have a C section. So far, I've got an A, B, and C. Or I could go A, B, A, C. But that might be piling on too much, because that'd be murder, detectives trying to solve the murder, murder, subplot. Okay, see where I'm going with that? So instead, I would have murder, detectives, subplot. At that point, it's probably time for another murder. Now you have to remember, this series is about serial killers, so there's kind of a theme there. So murder, detectives, subplot, murder. Now, we could do this. We could go immediately to detectives, B, so we would have A, B, C, A, B, or we could go A, B, C, A, C, or we can even add a subplot, a secondary subplot, A, B, C, A, D, A, B. So essentially what you do is you create these sections of your book. Section A is X. Section B is Y. Section C is Z. And then as you go, and I do this very frequently, especially within this series, I'll be writing along, writing and writing. And then I think, okay, how long has it been since there's been a murder? Or since this is an erotic thriller, I'll say, how long has it been since there's been sexy time? Ah, there's F. Ooh, see what I did there? So I might need to throw in an F section. I might even start with an F section. F, A, B, C. Ah, A, F, maybe? So what I'm doing is I'm building the rise and fall of the action with puzzle blocks. And you could think of it that way. Each one of these sections is a puzzle block. And with these puzzle blocks, you're going to put them together to create something interesting. To create not only create something interesting, but create something that keeps everything flowing along. On top of which, and this is very important, each section, each A, B, C, D, A, F, A, D, all of that, everything has to move the plot forward. Because if you don't, if this F section doesn't move the plot forward, it serves no purpose. You don't want superfluous sections in your book. And that's especially, and you know how I feel about this, that it's especially true of sexy time. If that doesn't further the plot along, then it's just gratuitous. So even if you're a new writer, and like I said, I don't do this, but if you're a new writer, before you start writing your story, kind of write it down on a piece of paper. My A section is going to be a murder. My B section is going to be the detectives trying to solve the murder. My C section is going to be a subplot. My D section is going to be a subplot. My F section is going to be sexy time. And maybe that's all the sections that you need. And now you just put them in place into the timeline such that they tell a story. Now remember, if you have a D subplot section, that doesn't mean that D only happens once, because you can deal with that subplot throughout the story. So you can have A, B, C, A, C, B, C, F. You see how it works? This is an absolutely fascinating and wonderful and efficient way to build a story. And as I said, I was out for a run the other day and I heard that song and I realized that I do that subconsciously. I did it last night. I was working on Violent Delights 5, Deadly Beloved. I can't believe I just remembered that title off the top of my head. I was working on it and I came to a new chapter and I was like, what haven't I written about in a while? What hasn't happened in my story for a while? And I realized it was this. So I grabbed that little block and I put it in place. And what's nice about that is when it happens kind of naturally, it serves as a springboard for the rest of your story. So as those pieces are building, you're not only building the structure of the story, you're building the story arc, and you're building the momentum of the story. Because think about it this way. If you go A, B, A, C, A, and then you throw in a D, and then you throw in an F, and then you throw in a B, you haven't had an A section in a while. So that can sort of decline the momentum of the story. So you always want to be piecing these blocks together in such a way that the story rises, not just rises, but rises and falls and dips and rises and keeps going up and up and up and up, but the momentum keeps going. So to that, I would also say that be careful of throwing in too many subplot sections. You know, a C, a D, an E, a G, I skipped F, you know why, an H. If you have too many subplot sections, that can lose momentum. Because you always want to make sure you're going back to the A and the B, because A's and B's are probably going to be the primary focus of the story. If F is the primary focus of the story, you know what you're writing. Anyway, there we go. That is ABACAB of writing. Thank you, Phil Collins and Genesis. And now I hope that you have that song stuck in your head for the rest of the day, because that's not really a bad thing. ABACAB is a great song. Again, I'm an 80s child. I'm Gen X. And I'm proud of it. Anyway, thank you so very, very much for being a part of my little journey here. I hope you've enjoyed it today, and I hope that you took my mea culpa at the beginning to heart, because it came from the heart. And it wasn't gratuitous, or that little, I realized that I started out with an H section for this, but anyway, you know what I'm saying. Thank you again. If you've enjoyed what I've said today, please share it with somebody. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Again, I'm not trying to make any money here. I'm just trying to help people, just trying to pass along some information, some inspiration, some knowledge, And most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful day.